The Office of the Prime Minister Press Office is the primary liaison between the Fourth Estate and the Office of the Prime Minister and Cabinet.
Every day, we are working to build a more inclusive economy and a stronger, safer country.
Hear all of the latest developments as the Davis administration carries out the broad mandate of progress and change. Our live weekly press briefings provide full access to current newsmakers on the most topical issues of the day. We facilitate prompt responses from cabinet ministers on the latest reports and get answers on the issues that matter to you.
Will any penalties be levied against the company?
OPM Press Now, keeping you in the know. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, especially to members of the press and those watching online, to the Office of the Prime Minister's weekly press briefing. It's good to see all of you. It's been a while since I've seen some of you. Hope you're enjoying your summer. Well, this morning we're going to talk about two very important current issues. First, we're going to talk, or at some point this morning, we're going to talk about the threat of tropical weather systems, which, of course, the Bahamas is subject to every year between June and November. We will hear from the Disaster Risk Management Authority, which is, of course, an amalgamation between the Disaster Risk, excuse me, let me get this right here, an amalgamation between NEMA, the National Emergency Management Agency, and the DRA, the Disaster Reconstruction Authority. Of course, that came about due to an act of Parliament. We will hear from the Managing Director, Mr. Aaron Sargent, about the goals and mandate of the new authority, and of course the initiatives that they're taking now to make sure that we are prepared to respond to the threat of disaster. We are also joined this morning by executives of BPL. Ms. Toni Seymour joins us this morning. She is, of course, the COO, and as you know, there have been intermittent issues with power generation on the island of Eleuthera. She will tell us exactly what is leading to these problems, and more importantly, what's being done in the short and long term to address those issues. We'll start things off with Ms. Seymour. Please welcome her.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I'm Toni Seymour, COO of BPL, and I want to start firstly by apologizing to our residents in Eleuthera who have been experiencing generation challenges over the past few weeks and months, and to reassure you and the residents of Eleuthera that BPL continues to aggressively pursue all available measures to stabilize power generation and distribution on the island of Eleuthera and Harbour Island. Increasing load demands and a series of unforeseen challenges have contributed to the continual outages, primarily concentrated in North and Central Eleuthera. Despite challenges, we continue to exploit all available options to restore supply in the short term. At the same time, BPL is continuing its long-term strategy to bring vast improvement to the electrical infrastructure on the mainland of Eleuthera, as well as Harbour Island. To understand the challenges in Eleuthera, we have to put the island's unique makeup into perspective. Eleuthera is one of two islands where we operate 3 separate power stations. Moreover, the more than 110-mile-long coverage area provides challenges for our distribution service teams. Most of the outages customers experience in Eleuthera are outside of BPL's control. We've had weather disturbances, traffic accidents, construction damage, and even wildlife have contributed to some of the events. In the instances where the damage is obvious, like a traffic accident, we usually still have to travel one end of the island to the other to address the cause. Where this becomes trickier is patrolling lines, often late at night or early morning, looking for particular faults responsible for an outage. On the generation side, we have accepted that Eleuthera is one of our booming population centers, spurred on by major investment projects. While great for the economy, it also means a growing load demand that we are playing catch up to address. Similarly, as with much of BPL's infrastructure throughout the country, it is aged and desperately needs to be replaced. We've spoken about the challenges before, but what's important for our customers in Eleuthera and Harbor Island to know is that we are working. In terms of our short-term solutions, we plan to install an additional 5 megawatts of generation at our Rock Sound Power Station to increase reliability of what is considered to be an aging plant. 6 megawatts of rental generation in Hatchet Bay, at the Hatchet Bay Power Station. And we are also upgrading the subsea cable between the mainland Eleuthera and Harbor Island to ensure that we are able to adequately meet the growing demands on Harbor Island. All of these projects are expected to be completed before the end of September 2024. To complement this, we are installing an additional 5 megawatts of BPL-owned generation on Harbor Island to meet the demands, which currently exceeds the 6 megawatts of the rental generation currently installed there. In all, BPL anticipates to have more than 15 megawatts of additional generating capacity available before the end of September 2024. In the meantime, we continue to exhaust all temporary solutions to get the most out of our existing fleet. With the redundancy needed, outages may occur, but we are committed to making additional spares and replacement parts available in Eleuthera to avoid delays in shipment and to engage additional manpower with the expertise to expedite repairs. We are nearing the completion of a transmission line between the Glass Window Bridge and the Hatchet Bay Power Station, which will help improve the voltage and reliability of supply in North Eleuthera, especially as sea spray and poor weather conditions result in supply challenges to the existing distribution infrastructure. System upgrades are also underway. Interrupters are being installed on feeders leaving Hatchet Bay Power Station and Rock Sound Power Station to prevent distribution faults from being transmitted back to the stations and causing prolonged outages. The team is also carrying out load balancing exercises in Tarpon Bay, Rock Sound, and South Eleuthera to improve supply to those areas. Finally, our roving team, which is based in New Providence, has been on the island of Eleuthera several times this year and are currently there now, carrying out overhead line maintenance, tree trimming, line clearing, pole replacements, etc. We want to ensure our customers that work is being done in Eleuthera. Admittedly, we have challenges with procuring parts, considering the long lead times in some cases and the significant financial outlay required for many of these projects. Nonetheless, the importance of a stable network for Eleuthera and Harbor Island's economies and to our customers who rely on electricity for their most basic needs is evident to everyone at BPL. We assure you that whenever there is a problem, BPL's leadership team and its team on the island go in full crisis mode to resolve the issue. Our commitment to our customers is reliable, sustainable power in Eleuthera before the end of the summer. Thank you. Questions?
You give a timeline or a date of September for the installation of those generation capacities. I think you said September, by the end of September. Are you able to then give the assurance to the Eleuthera residents that once these are installed, that the challenges that they've been seeing will be no more? They will be able to have reliable and consistent power?
So the challenges that are related to a shortfall in generation will be resolved, but issues, like I mentioned earlier, such as traffic accidents, weather storms, et cetera, that impact the transmission and distribution network will be things that are out of our control. So there will still be some outages, but it should definitely be reduced.
As an executive of BPL, what would you say is the relationship between BPL executives and workers, given that the workers, the union president who represents workers at last report, he said that the workers are angry, ready for action, given that they feel blindsided by this whole BPL reform, Pike Corporation being integrated into BPL. What would you say is the relationship at this point?
I would say presently industrial relations between the executives and the unions are stable. We meet with both unions regularly. As it relates to the reform and the integration of Pike, those discussions are being held at a governmental level, And Minister Colby Davis, I think, issued a press release recently as to how that framework will look. So unions are also meeting with her and Prime Minister Davis to iron out whatever those particular industrial relation matters are at this time.
Once Bahamas Grid is up and running, what will BPL T&D employees be doing? Will they still have a job afterwards or no?
That is a question for the policymakers. I can't speak to that at this time.
One more question. With regard to some comments Dr. Dwayne Sands made that BPL bills are still going up despite BPL saying they're going down, how do you respond to what he's been saying?
So the bills, the rates have been reduced. The new tariff structure is that consumption between 0 to 200 kilowatt hours, there's no charge. You only pay for fuel. 201 to 800 is still the 11.95 cents. 800 and above is still the 14.95 cents. And the fuel surcharge is charged over whatever your consumption is. So if you're using below 200 kilowatt hours per month, you're only paying for the cost of fuel for that usage. So the bill should have gone down. However, it is hotter. And if you are not implementing energy saving tips, conservation measures, then you may see an increase in your overall consumption and as a result, an increase in your bill.
Okay, so essentially he does have a point, but not really, because that could be explained away because of the high usage during the summer.
Well, I can't speak to his particular consumption because I have not reviewed, his consumption history. But if he does have a concern, he can reach out to us at BPL and we'll be happy to meet with him.
Thank you.
Well, good morning.
Good morning.
My question is related to the roving team that you said is located here in Providence. You mentioned that the team usually travels to Eleuthera, or travels
Throughout the Family
throughout
Islands.
the Family Islands. Given the fact that we've had so many issues in terms of power generation, has it ever come up in conversation to have teams dedicated or placed on that island, for lack of a better term?
So all of the islands are manned. I mean, Eleuthera has a full complement of staff, T&D and generation. It is just that when there are major projects that need to be completed that the staff can't handle on their own, we send additional resources from New Providence. So whether it's mechanical technicians, electricians, linemen, whoever is needed at that time is who we send. It's not always feasible to overstaff a family island because they're having issues, but we can relocate staff from other islands on New Providence to assist where necessary.
And also given the fact that a lot of the Family Islands, specifically like in Suma, Eleuthera, the population is growing, are there any conversations to put a new plant on those islands?
Definitely. So, once we complete our load projections and we see what our growth is, so I'll give you an example. Typically, year over year, we see load growth of between 2.5% and 3%, but in the last 2 years, it's been between 5% and 8% on a number of our Family Islands and New Providence. So as the load increases, we have to make strategic decisions as to how we're going to supplement our generation on those various islands and also New Providence.
Us now being in the hurricane season, heading into the peak of the hurricane season, what is BPL, and I guess given some of the challenges that BPL has already been going through with like islands like Eleuthera and some other areas as well, I guess what is BPL's ability to, one, handle a hurricane or major hurricane should one, God forbid, but if one comes to the Bahamas, and then I guess response time to be able to recover from whatever the damages may look like?
So we hope and pray that there are no storms because we know of recent times they have been devastating. However, we do our best to prepare ahead of time. So for us, preparation for hurricane season begins in January with line clearing, tree trimming, pole-by-pole inspections, replacing rotten poles. We focus on the transmission network because if the transmission network is stabilized after a storm, it's faster to restore. And of course, we have our teams in place. We set up, if a storm is imminent, we set up our command center. We have our trucks stocked and staged ahead of time. And if a particular island is impacted, for example, an island that's not New Providence, then we dispatch the majority of our resources to that island to help restore. We're also a part of CAROLEC, and CARELEC provides additional resources to anyone that may have been impacted that needs assistance.
Also, could you say by what percentage has the base rate decreased, even as you guys would have promised lower power bills?
Well, for the 0 to 200 category, it decreased by 100% because it's now 0. It hasn't changed over the other categories.
Okay, also, I know that you mentioned that at the end of September, it would have been the 15 additional generation. So just in terms, if there isn't a decrease in outages like BPL hopes, is BPL willing to maybe have a backup plan to later give more generation in terms of that?
So we're always looking at ways to improve. The addition in generation will be the first step. The backup plan is if the load continues to grow beyond what the additional generation can sustain, then we have to look at building a bigger power station. There are currently RFPs being evaluated for renewable energy in all of the Family Islands, so that would be integrated into our resource plan as to how we sustain these islands moving forward.
And I know over this time as well, because of the ongoing power outages, some people have complained like their compliances would have been destroyed or they lost something. So has BPL, can you say how many of those persons would have got, I guess, reimbursed or got some relief since then?
I can't say the numbers, but we do have a damage claim policy. So if there is an issue, our customers can fill out a damage claim form. They can send us the cost of the equipment that they have lost. We'll complete an investigation. I should note that we only pay for damages that are as a direct result of things that are in our control. So weather-related outages, traffic accidents, anything caused by a third party, we do not pay reimbursements for. But if it is a direct BPL-related issue, then we do offer reimbursement.
Can you say if there's been an increase from Eleuthera specifically with possible for BPL to use smaller islands like Harbor Island to implement renewable energy sources like wind turbines and solar energy to assist with the 30% renewable by 2023 government goals?
So, as I mentioned, the Ministry of Energy has a space for a solar farm, for example. So, more than likely, any renewable generation will be on the mainland, and then the mainland will be used to provide supply to Harbor Island. So, in densely populated areas, the only place for solar would be, for example, on a rooftop, maybe on a school, a clinic, etc.
Seymour. Well, we're already into the hurricane and disaster conversation, and that's why the Disaster Risk Management Authority exists. I'd like to welcome Constructed Authority and what its immediate and long-term goals are. Mr. Sargent.
Good morning, members of the media and viewers at home. My name is Aaron Sargent. I am the Managing Director of the Disaster Risk Management Authority. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you, Press Secretary Adderley and the Office of the Prime Minister for inviting us. Hurricane Beryl has reminded us of the increasing frequency and intensity of storms due to climate change and the devastation and loss that they can leave in their wake. This is a stark reminder that we must continuously strengthen our disaster management efforts to protect lives and futures. In response to this growing threat, the government of the Bahamas has recognized the urgent need for a more comprehensive, streamlined, and proactive disaster management approach. This culminated in the passing of the Disaster Risk Management Act of 2022, a groundbreaking piece of legislation. A special thanks to our Minister, the Honorable Leon Lundy, and our Permanent Secretary, Marcellus Taylor, who pressed to enact this legislation, which allows the DRM Authority to be doing the crucial work that we do every day. The DRM Act is one of the most progressive disaster risk management laws in the Caribbean, bringing us on par with global best standards in this field. Its primary objectives include developing and implementing a comprehensive, inclusive, and proactive approach to managing natural hazards, reducing risk involving loss of life, health, physical integrity, economic disruption, and environmental damage. Prioritizing the protection of vulnerable populations, such as the disabled, poverty, or gender-based. Promoting the involvement and participation of all relevant sectors and stakeholders. Mandating the creation of the National Disaster Risk Management Policy. To carry out these objectives, the Disaster Risk Management Authority was established as an agile and autonomous quasi-governmental organization, and it was formed based on the merger of the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, and the Disaster Reconstruction Authority, and it was operationalized on July 1st of this year. We are now tasked with building on the substantial work of our predecessors to direct a more comprehensive and proactive disaster management approach. As the primary disaster management agency of the Bahamas, we are responsible for the development and coordination of national disaster management planning and efforts covering all stages of the disaster cycle. Mitigation, which is lessening the impact of storms through disaster risk reduction, planning, and providing long-term solutions backed by data and technology. Preparation, collaborating with government and private sector partners to ensure readiness of all responders and equipment and supplies in disasters. Response, coordinating the national interagency responses. Recovery, overseeing the delivery of humanitarian relief and recovery efforts, implementing measures to restore normalcy. What sets the DRM Authority apart is our comprehensive, proactive, and independent approach in keeping with the objectives of the Disaster Risk Management Act. We are comprehensive. The DRM Authority covers all phases of the disaster management cycle, allowing for greater streamlining of processes, resources. Furthermore, it incorporates planning and a role for all family islands and sectors. We are proactive. The DRM Authority places greater emphasis on the mitigation stage, focusing on preventative actions and institutional planning to shield our people from the impact of natural hazards before they arrive. We are independent. As a quasi-governmental authority, the DRM has autonomy and agility to move swiftly and innovatively in the implementation of disaster management policies. Though still under 2 months old, we have hit the ground running and currently oversee a number of ongoing and upcoming initiatives aimed at enhancing our disaster management capabilities in the short and long term. From a mitigation perspective, the interim strategic plan and future development of our country work program has started. At our second Board of Directors meeting, we adopted our 18-month strategic plan, which includes 4 pillars of focus: administration, operations, strategy and planning, and capital projects. This plan will guide our internal goals and key objectives over the next 18 months. Additionally, we begin the development of our long-term 3 to 5 year country work program with SEDEMA. Actually, today, we have a meeting after this with SEDEMA. The country work program will provide a detailed outline for disaster risk management, for the disaster risk management space, and allow for the DRM Authority to access external funding to support its work. SEDEMA is the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, for those who may not be aware. The second point is the Multi-Island Hurricane Shelter Project. We are constructing purpose-built hurricane shelters that can withstand 200-mile-per-hour winds, with 6 shelters slotted across the country. The first shelter is in Abaco and is expected to be completed by the end of this year. The National Disaster Risk Information System. We are introducing a database of information on past storms and hazards to project future risk factors. The National Disaster Risk Management and Emergency Management Plans. We are in the process of developing comprehensive plans for disaster management and emergency response. Lastly, comprehensive financial strategy. We are incorporating the Disaster Emergency Fund and the Disaster Prevention Fund to ensure sustainable funding for disaster scenarios and resilience planning. The authority is empowered to raise funds externally, which would allow to reduce the reliance on government funding and budget cycles. Preparation phase, capacity building. We are conducting broad and varied training in modern technology and systems and skills with the support of our regional partners, regional and international partners, such as SEDEMA, the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, US NORTHCOM, USAID, and the Pacific Disaster Center, PDC. The development of a national early warning system. We are developing a system that will enable action against natural hazards. We are currently reviewing our Family Island comprehensive disaster management plans. We have also conducted monthly briefings with the Prime Minister in conjunction with the Prime Minister's Delivery Unit. In terms of response, we have engaged our regional partners, SEDEMA, on UAV training, training for first responders and disaster professionals in using unmanned aerial vehicles for rapid damage assessment, incident command center software. We are implementing new software to enhance efficiency, cohesion of our emergency operations center, which will integrate Family Island incident command centers. The RICS tabletop exercise. We have completed the Restore Island Keys exercise, which is a joint effort with the DRM Authority and US Northcom, and it is a command center exercise that is designed to prepare all practitioners in disaster management for a scenario of a catastrophic hurricane. Inventory systems, we are implementing a new inventory system in all of our warehouses throughout the country to improve accuracy and distribution. Recovery, the national humanitarian standards. We are developing standards to regulate and improve the level of services and care provided by government and non-governmental agencies after a disaster. Rapid needs and damage assessment teams. We are working with our international partners to identify local technical experts to serve on a specialized needs and damage assessment team for rapid deployment after disaster events. Surplus relief supplies procurement. We are currently procuring additional relief supplies to bolster our current stock in warehouses throughout the country. A critical aspect of our strategy is a holistic, whole-of-country approach to disaster management, encompassing all islands and including non-governmental sectors. We are working with Family Island administrators to address their unique disaster management needs and challenges. We are in the process of reviewing, evaluating, and enhancing Family Island disaster management plans, and in our first month and a half of operation, we have visited Grand Bahama and 5 Family Islands, namely Abaco, Maguana, Inagua, Acklins, and Crooked Island, to meet with local leadership to identify their needs. We look forward to continuing our conversations with Family Island administrators and visiting more islands in the coming months. In recognizing the significant role that the nonprofit sector plays, we will also develop a national NGO council to enhance coordination with that sector in disaster management. You can look forward to more information on many of these initiatives as this year progresses. One of the pressing priorities right now is ensuring that we are in a constant state of readiness for this hurricane season. We have been in close contact with Family Island administrators to assess their current needs, and in our visits, we have toured shelters and their local command centers, and in some cases upgraded their communications equipment with the latest satellite phone technology. We have absorbed the emergency response mechanisms of NEMA, and we can assure the people that our National Emergency Operating Center and its corresponding emergency support functions stand as ready as ever to act in the event of a disaster. As you know, the Bahamas Department of Meteorology and the US National Hurricane Center have forecasted an exceptionally active Atlantic hurricane season. We are now entering the busiest months, August and September. And just as we are ensuring our own readiness, we urge all Bahamians to don't wait. Get storm ready, protect your home, business, family, whatever matters to you. Prepare your home and family. Make a family emergency plan. Prepare your house and yard. Get emergency supplies. Get insured. Know your nearest shelter and make an evacuation plan. If an evacuation order is issued, please evacuate. While we will not force anyone to leave their homes, the DRM Act states that first responders are not mandated to risk life and limb to rescue those who have chosen to stay against an evacuation order. By staying, you may be cutting yourself off from assistance. Disaster preparedness involves all of us. Learn more on how you can get storm ready at our preparedness website, www.getready.gov.bs. Together, we can ensure safety and resilience of our nation. We cannot prevent hurricanes, but with stronger, smarter disaster management, we can prevent displacement, injury, and loss of life. Thank you for your attention and your continued support. Questions?
We're nearing the 5-year anniversary of Dorian. what are the DRM's recovery plans looking like for islands like Grand Bahama and Abaco? When you drive through them, you can still see the remnants of that storm. You can still see some people that are still without homes. What are those plans like?
So the DRM Authority is tasked with preparedness. I think that's a driving factor behind the work that we are doing now. The long-term rehabilitative efforts and long-term recovery efforts in Grand Bahama and Abaco have now since been transferred to the Ministry of Housing and other relevant government entities. Going forward, you would find that the DRM Authority, in the aftermath of an event, a natural weather event, is an effort of those communities.
Would you be able to give further details into the Abaco shelter that you mentioned? That's supposed to be completed by the end of this year.
Yes, we are now up to Belcourse. The two wings or bays of the shelter are now, the roof is fully on. We have an update meeting, which is a standing meeting every month, with the contractor and project management team. They're working diligently to get the building fully enclosed, but we will have the building ready and operational by the end of the year, which would be, and it would be able to house a number of residents. I think the capacity is around 200 persons in that shelter. And again, of course, you know, our thought process is that that is still not enough. Capacity, we need to build capacity to be able to, whenever there is a storm, and we have to be able to house people throughout the storm or after the storm, we need to build capacity in that arena. And so that's why we are looking towards building additional purpose-built shelters that serve dual capacities that would allow us to be able to mitigate those efforts.
Can you say exactly where the shelter is in Abaco?
It's in Central Pines, Abaco, immediately opposite the Central Pines Primary School, I believe.
We've been made to understand some $2 million was allocated for preparation and recovery for the DRM. How do you feel about it from what you said? Do you feel as though both allocations are sufficient for both items, given how we see hurricanes are exacerbating, given climate change, they're worsening by the season?
Yeah. We could always do it more. We could always do it more. In the disaster risk management sphere, there's a saying that if you spend $1 today on prevention, you save $10 to $15 on recovery. And again, we are going to utilize the tools that are given to us in a way that's transparent and accountable, but we are going to also seek external funding. I would have alluded to earlier the fact that we have the ability through our resource mobilization division to go out and seek grants. We are in the process of seeking a number of grants this hurricane season to bolster some of our efforts, which includes swapping out technology, which is one of our biggest concerns with ensuring that Family Island administrators are always in the loop when it comes to disaster management, as we do not have offices or physical presence on each island. And so we depend heavily on Family Island administrators to deliver that for us. So utilizing external resources, and as we know in our country, the government cannot sustain every effort. And so we are looking to external parties, and we're also encouraging a whole of country approach, which means you also have a part to play in how we prepare for disasters, which means to get ready. While we are, and in this space we call it blue sky times, while we have time to, let's get ready as best as possible.
Has the cost of the shelter in Abaco increased significantly? I know previously you spoke about the DRA at the time, spoke about some challenges with the facility.
Yeah.
With you now saying it should be operational by the end of the year, what does the cost look like in terms of?
The cost of the shelter is approximately $4.5 million. That's inclusive of all of the relative change orders, and those changes came because the initial design was built on cavernous land, and so our engineering team had to mitigate it to ensure that safety is first, and once we build that shelter, we can be assured that when people enter, they are safe.
In terms of that shelter, I believe that there was an investigation launched at some point in terms of the construction. Is there an update into that investigation?
At this time, I have no update on the matter. We are awaiting official communications from the law enforcement team who are investigating.
Have they given a reason for the delay in update?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
But again, we are focused on preparedness. We are focused on trying to ensure that during this hurricane season and for future hurricane seasons, we are prepared as possible as a people, as we will continue to be affected by the effects of climate change and natural hazards. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sargent, Mr. Storr, and your team from the DRM Authority. Well, that brings our press briefing to a close unless there are any other questions. Yes.
Get an update on the Prime Minister's recovery.
Well, it's been about a week now since the Prime Minister has been back in country. He's back to work. I'm very happy to be back to work, I should say. Obviously, he's still on the mend, and he's following doctor's orders to take it easy physically, one day at a time, but he is looking good and feeling good.
Will the schedule change, or will we see much of him in the next coming weeks? Or?
He is out and about. He's taking meetings. He has a schedule. The schedule may be slightly pulled back to, obviously, to accommodate his recovery. You wouldn't want him to overdo it. But otherwise, he's at work and his schedule is operating as normal. All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone, and have a good afternoon.